Thank you. Welcome today to today's webinar. My name's TJ. I'm with the Elections Group. For anybody joining for the first time, the Elections Group is an election administration consulting firm. We partner with state and local officials to improve processes for election officials and voters. Before we get too far into today's webinar, I do want to mention that the Q&A feature is open for audience members to ask questions. We'll have a dedicated time toward the end of the webinar to address any of those questions. If you don't get your question answered, or if you have something else that you'd like to ask, please email support@electionsgroup.com. Again, that is support@electionsgroup.com. We're really fortunate today to have three outstanding guests to talk to us more about a topic that I think is important to every election official and every election office, which is the trust of voters. Those of you who have been on past webinars in this series know that this series was born out of the Bipartisan Policy Center's Election Workforce Advisory Council, as well as the Election Science Reform and Administration Conference, which I know some of our guests are really instrumental in organizing and hosting. I'm going to go to the guests to introduce themselves, and we'll begin with Leah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, TJ, for having us today. My name is Leah Merivaki, and effective August 1st, I will be an associate teaching professor at the McCourt School of Public Policy and an associate research professor in the Massive Data Institute at Georgetown University. My work focuses on the health of the information ecosystem, with the election officials being the core actors, and obviously building trust in the election process and voter confidence.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me.
We'll go to Mara.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Mara Sutman-Lee. I am an associate professor at Connecticut College and an Andrew Carnegie Fellow class of 2024. And very similar to Leah, my work focuses on the health of the election information ecosystem. I am extremely passionate about voter education and helping election officials connect and support their constituents, and also supporting the work that you do.
Excellent. And then we'll round it off with Martha.
Hi there, I'm Martha Croft, and I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I've been doing work for more than 20 years about various aspects of election reform and election science. My most recent book will be out this year, a Republic If You Can Afford It. How much does it cost to administer elections? But the last couple of years, I've been working on public opinion research on how much people know about voting rules.
Thank you all for your introductions. We're going to go directly into your presentation to start off, and then move into a little bit of a discussion afterward. So I'm going to hand it over to Mara to go through the slides.
Yes, thank you so much. And if we could just go on to the next slide. We promise we don't have many. We just want to do a little stage setting for you, and then we can turn it over to questions. So what I am going to do here for the next couple of minutes is introduce what Leah and I affectionately call Team Voter Education, or Team Voter EDU. And as Leah has shared and I've reiterated, our goal is to understand how you, as election officials, can help build a healthy election information ecosystem. In other words, how can you effectively communicate with your constituents about whom you care and you want to support, and help them have positive voting experiences? So this question derives from our work on voter education. And so we think about voter education in two ways, and we'd love to hear any insight and questions you have about how we define this term and if we can improve upon that definition. So one, it's straightforward. How do you vote? Where do you register? When do you need to register? Et cetera, et cetera. How do you return your mail ballot? What are these drop boxes that I'm meant to be using? But it's also education about the process, about how elections are run, importantly for the context of this webinar, about how they are secured. And a lot of that learning happens through that first part, through voters who successfully register, cast a mail ballot, go in person, their vote counts, they feel confident. But there is also a whole host of other things that we see election officials doing in our work to try to inform the voters about how the process is secure. And so we spend a lot of time looking at what resources you do use. A lot of that focuses on what you're sharing on social media. But we're also trying to understand how you educate voters online and offline in the most effective ways, especially when we have this era of misinformation and polarization in terms of attitudes towards election officials. And Leah's going to speak to in just a moment some of what we have uncovered and what we're working with in terms of trying to speak to that piece of the puzzle in particular, both bolstering confidence in the election administrative process, but also addressing this really thorny issue of polarization and misinformation in perceptions of election administration. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Leah, and she is going to fill you in.
Thank you, Maura. If we can move on to the next slide. So with the foundation of what is voter education, how election officials inform their voters with the resources that they have available that ebb and flow every election cycle, and as I'm sure Martha knows, we are very much interested in understanding the mechanisms through which these efforts shape the voter experience and what outcomes we can identify to measure those effects. And our primary interest is developing and testing what we call the educative effects. So at a very basic level, do these efforts help in voters navigate those processes and successfully participating in elections, starting with processes that are very complex and high error, like how to complete a voter registration, if it's in paper, if it's online, and successfully navigating that process, how to request and return a mail ballot that will be cast and submitted as valid and complete, and it will be counted. And our research does find positive relationships there, suggesting that those efforts improve the knowledge of voters and help them navigate these processes and avoid mistakes. So we consider that as an important mechanism there because we know that from research that there are several voters who are equally interested and engaged, but some of these processes leave them out of voting and taint the voter experience. The second mechanism that we identify, which is more in tune with a lot of the efforts that we're discussing in this context with misinformation and election denial, is trust. What kind of efforts do election officials engage in that contribute in increasing voter confidence? So the way we measure it in election science is confidence that votes cast are counted. My vote personally, votes in my jurisdiction, votes in my state, votes nationally. So for the last couple of years, drawing from campaigns like Trusted Info and other state and local specific campaigns, we are trying to understand what does it mean to communicate about trust. What does it mean to build trust in elections? How elections are kept secure, that election officials are your trusted source of information. And we are trying to understand how those communications and those efforts help in restoring trust in elections. So our research suggests that there is a positive and strong relationship, especially when election offices prioritize communications about how elections are kept secure, all the different safeguards, and kind of sending a consistent message about security and trust. We do see a positive relationship in voter confidence, especially at the local and state level, which is very important. We know that the further away from home is a term we use, that confidence decreases, which is a major concern. And there are other factors that shape individuals' perceptions about voting election security, particularly when voters are considering, well, I don't know what's happening in other states. I don't know what's happening nationwide, but I know what's happening in my state, and I'm more confident in what's happening closer to my jurisdiction. So we find evidence that voter education matters, obviously, and we know because we have validation from election officials like you, confirming some of these findings, but we also have empirical research to truly kind of solidify the robustness of these relationships, that voters learn. There is a process there that helps voters learn, and also increasing transparency and leading to a higher confidence that the process is secure. So connecting voters to the process and the outcome, that when you have those safeguards and you cast your vote will count accurately. So this is the basic highlight of our research, and I don't want to go into more detail. I'm glad to expand and elaborate more. And I'm leaving the room for Martha to talk about work on election knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Next slide, please. So I have been very interested, excuse me, been very interested in how much voters actually know when you ask them what they know about elections. And at the same time, for the last several years, I've been watching with fascination Leah and Mara show in piece of research after piece of research that those voters who are more informed and know the right things can say, for example, they'll be less likely to have their ballot rejected. They're going to have a higher confidence level. And these things are it's amazing research. And so it's what really motivated me to join some of my work to theirs, because what I was interested in was how much voters really know about voting rules. Now, just a teeny bit of background on this. We political scientists, I'm a political scientist by trade, and for years I've been reading about, voters' knowledge about government. And we all know, actually, that it's pretty low. But interestingly, if you look through those questions, they're asking things like, do you know what the Electoral College is? Do you know who controls the Senate? And they're not really asking about those things that people really need to know in order to vote. And so that motivated me to ask voters. And so in 2022, my Department of Political Science and Public Administration at UNC Charlotte, we all gathered together to put questions together to ask voters and non-voters. And so we asked actually 1,000 voters and non-voters in 2022 some questions about election and voting knowledge. And we asked, for example, can you vote if you have no government-issued photo ID? And as it turns out, 43% of people got that correct. And now they might say, of course you need a photo ID in a state where you don't need an ID. Or they might have said, well, you don't need an ID in a state where you do. We also asked about registering before Election Day. The majority of people got that correct, right? People know when they have to register if they have to register early or before elections. The one thing that we're really concerned about and that we've seen a lot of research about is that people don't often understand that they can vote even when they have been a convicted felon if they've served their sentences in a lot of places. States vary on their laws. But the way we asked the question, only 17% of people in their state got that right. So we ask, in your state, do you know if this is correct or not? The last three are ones that we think, or that I think, work with voter confidence. So you might see someone that doesn't seem to speak English easily and they're voting in the election place. Are they allowed to vote? Not everybody got that one correct. And then, of course, outstanding traffic tickets or unpaid utility bills. Not everyone got that correct either, or even your late in paying taxes. These are the kind of things that might prevent people from voting as well at the end of the day. So we think that all of these things improve confidence. This is research that we plan to do in the future, right, to connect knowledge. And remember, I didn't have a lot of space to ask everything that we'd want to know. So that's why I picked these, because I've seen them done in the past. And they're ones that I thought were related to confidence. And so the next project is to connect these to the level of confidence. But our paper that we gave at the Election Science Conference connected those jurisdictions that were using the various educational methods that Tamara and Leah have been studying for so many years. And we were looking to see if we could connect those educational methods to how much voters knew. And we found some pretty good results. For sure, for example, needing to register before Election Day is something that we found pretty good evidence, excellent evidence, in fact, in our analyses, comparing light voters to light voters or non-voters to see what they knew. Essentially, we found some pretty good evidence that the voter educational efforts really do matter. And so this is what we just want you all to know, that civic education matters and your education matters. And so, TJ, I'll give it back to you. We can get some questions here.
Excellent.